The fire rain, the cargo hauler Lucky Strike, screamed through the atmosphere of Kepler 442b like a dying whale, trailing smoke and sparks in equal measure. Marcus Rodriguez gripped the control stick with white knuckles, sweat dripping down his weathered face as he fought to keep the ship from becoming a crater. The Zephyrian plasma cannon had found its mark, turning what should have been a routine supply run into a one-way ticket to nowhere. "Come on, baby," Marcus muttered through gritted teeth, his thick accent cutting through the shriek of tortured metal. "Don't give up on me now." The former Marine had survived 3 tours in the Outer Rim conflicts, but nothing had prepared him for the sight of those silver ships materializing out of hyperspace, like angry ghosts. The Zephyrians had been getting bolder lately, pushing deeper into human territory. This time, they'd caught him with his pants down. The impact, the Lucky Strike, hit the planet's surface with the grace of a brick thrown by an angry god. Marcus felt his ribs crack against the safety harness as the ship plowed through crystalline formations that jutted from the ground like frozen lightning, the cockpit filled with smoke and the bitter smell of burning electronics. When the world stopped spinning, Marcus found himself hanging upside down in his pilot's seat, blood trickling from a gash above his left eye. His head felt like someone had used it for batting practice, but he was alive. That was something. "Status report," he croaked to the ship's computer, though he already knew the answer. "Hull breach in sections 3 through 7. Life support at 40%. Main engines offline. Communications array severely damaged," the synthetic voice replied with mechanical calm. Marcus laughed, though it came out more like a cough. Well, at least the artificial intelligence's still got a sense of humor. The discovery after extracting himself from the wreckage, Marcus took stock of his situation. The cargo bay had split open like a ripe fruit, scattering medical supplies and food rations across the alien landscape. At least he wouldn't starve immediately. The planet's atmosphere was breathable, though it tasted like copper pennies and regret. That's when he heard it, a low, keening sound that definitely wasn't coming from his damaged ship. Marcus grabbed his sidearm and the emergency medical kit, following the sound through a maze of crystal formations that cast rainbow shadows in the pale light of the system's twin suns. What he found stopped him cold. A Zephyrian warrior lay crumpled. Against a boulder, her silver armor cracked and leaking a luminescent blue fluid that Marcus recognized as their equivalent of blood. She was tall, maybe 7 feet, with the characteristic elongated limbs and translucent skin that marked her species. Her breathing was shallow, labored. This was the enemy, the same species that had just shot him down. The same aliens who had been raiding human colonies for the past 5 years, taking prisoners and resources with ruthless efficiency. Command had made it clear, no quarter given, none expected. But as Marcus stared at the dying warrior, all he could see was someone who needed help. The choice. "Damn it," Marcus whispered, holstering his weapon and kneeling beside the alien. The Zephyrian's eyes snapped open, revealing pupils that shifted from silver to deep purple. She tried to reach for what looked like a curved blade at her side, but her arm wouldn't cooperate. Instead, a weak hiss escaped her throat, probably a curse in her native language. "Easy there, soldier," Marcus said, keeping his voice calm and steady. "I'm not here to hurt you." The warrior's eyes narrowed, studying him with an intelligence that was unmistakably fierce, despite her weakened state. She spoke, her voice like wind chimes in a storm, words in a language Marcus didn't understand, but whose meaning was clear enough. "Why haven't you killed me?" Marcus activated his universal translator, a piece of tech that had saved his bacon more times than he could count. The device hummed to life, creating a bridge between their languages. "Because," Marcus said, opening his medical kit, "where I come from, we don't leave people to die alone. The healing." The Zephyrian, who had introduced herself as Kirathel through pained whispers, had taken a plasma bolt to the chest. The wound, was deep, cauterized at the edges but still bleeding that strange blue fluid. Marcus had seen similar injuries during his military service, though never on an alien. "This is going to hurt," he warned, cleaning the wound with antiseptic. Kirathel's body went rigid, but she didn't cry out. Tough as nails, this one. As Marcus worked, he found himself talking. It was something he'd learned in the service, how conversation could distract from pain and fear. "You know, back on Earth we have this saying, 'The enemy of my enemy is my friend.' Right now, our mutual enemy is this planet trying to kill us both." Kirathel's translator crackled as she responded. "Your species confuses me. We were taught that humans are savage beasts, interested only in conquest and destruction." Marcus chuckled grimly as he applied a pressure bandage. "Yeah, well, we heard similar things about your people. Funny how propaganda works, isn't it?" The shelter with Kirathel stabilized but still weak, Marcus helped her to an abandoned mining facility he'd spotted during his initial survey. The structure was old, probably left behind by whatever species had originally colonized this rock before moving on to greener pastures. Inside, they found basic amenities, a water recycler that still functioned, emergency lighting, and most importantly, thick walls that would hide them from thermal scanners. Marcus set up a small camp while Kirathel rested, her breathing gradually becoming less labored. "Why?" she asked suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "Why what?" "Why help me? Your people and mine have been at war for years. I have killed humans in battle. I would have killed you if I had been able." Marcus considered this, staring at the alien warrior who now looked more like an injured person than a terrifying enemy. "Because," he said finally, "I spent 3 years in the Marines. I've seen what war does to people, how it turns them into things they never wanted to be. But I also learned that sometimes the most human thing you can do is choose to be better than the situation demands." The stories over the next few hours, as Kepler 442b's twin suns traced their paths across the sky, Marcus found himself sharing stories. He told Kirathel about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests that had given birth to humanity. He spoke of children playing in parks, of scientists working to cure diseases, of artists creating beauty for its own sake. "Your people," Kirathel said, her voice stronger now, "they are not what we were told." "Neither are yours," Marcus replied. "I was expecting fangs and claws, maybe some tentacles. Instead, I find someone who bleeds, who hurts, who cares about her people just like I care about mine." Kirathel's skin seemed to shimmer, a sign that Marcus was learning indicated deep emotion. "My clutch mother used to tell me stories," she said, "about the time before the war, when our people looked to the stars with wonder instead of fear. I had forgotten them until now." The search as night fell, the sound of engines echoed across the crystalline landscape. Zephyrian search craft, their sleek forms cutting through the atmosphere like silver knives. Marcus and Kirathel watched from the mining facility's observation deck as spotlights swept the terrain below. "They're looking for survivors," Kirathel said. "They will not stop until they find me." "Then we better make sure they don't," Marcus replied, checking his weapon. "At least not until you're strong enough to travel." Kirathel turned to study him, her changing eyes reflecting the distant lights of the search ships. "You would fight your own species' enemies to protect me?" "I'd fight anyone who tries to hurt someone under my protection," Marcus said simply. "That's what we do. That's what makes us human." The Bondays, the searchlights, moved farther away. Marcus settled down beside Kirathel, sharing his emergency rations. The alien food tasted like sweet metal, but it was better than nothing. "Marcus Rodriguez," Kirathel said carefully, practicing the unfamiliar sounds. "That is your full designation?" "Just Marcus, or Tank if you want to be informal." "Tank's what my squad used to call me." "Tank," she repeated, a sound that might have been amusement coloring her voice. Because you are difficult to stop? Because I'm stubborn as hell and twice as ugly, Marcus grinned. What about you? Kirathel doesn't exactly roll off the human tongue. It means seeker of distant lights in the old language, she said. My clutch mother hoped I would explore the stars and bring back wisdom. Well, Marcus said, looking up at the alien constellations visible through the facility's transparent roof. I'd say you're living up to that name. Maybe not in the way she expected, but wisdom comes in all shapes and sizes. As the night deepened and the search parties moved on, Marcus found himself thinking about the path that had led him here. A simple cargo run had become something else entirely, something that might change everything he thought he knew about the war, about the enemy, about what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of strangers. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new choices. But tonight, under alien stars, two enemies had become something else entirely. Perhaps, Marcus thought as he drifted off to sleep, that was where real peace always began. With one person choosing to see another as more than just a target. Bonds forged in fire. The dawn of understanding. The third day on Kepler 442b began with the sound of distant thunder, though the skies remained clear. Marcus recognized the deep rumble immediately. Heavy transport ships, probably carrying ground troops. The Zephyrians weren't just searching anymore. They were preparing for a full-scale recovery operation. Kirathel stirred from her resting place, her translucent skin now showing healthier patterns of silver and blue instead of the sickly gray it had been when Marcus first found her. The humans' medical supplies had worked better than either of them had expected, bridging the gap between their different biologies through sheer determination and careful observation. Your people are persistent, Marcus observed, watching through the facility's cracked viewport as more ships appeared on the horizon. They believe I carry important intelligence, Kirathel replied, slowly sitting up. Her movements were still careful, but the strength was returning to her voice. The location of your supply routes, defensive positions, they will not abandon me easily. Marcus turned from the window, studying his unlikely companion. Over the past 3 days, their conversations had revealed truths that neither species' propaganda had prepared them for. The Zephyrians weren't the mindless conquerors human media portrayed, and humans weren't the savage destroyers that Zephyrian commanders described to their troops. What if they're wrong about what you carry? Marcus asked. Kirathel's eyes shifted to that deep purple that Marcus had learned indicated confusion or deep thought. Explain. What if the most important thing you're carrying back to your people isn't military intelligence? What if it's something else entirely? The truth behind the war. As the morning progressed, Marcus worked on his damaged communication array while Kirathel watched, occasionally offering suggestions that revealed her own technical knowledge. Their conversations had grown deeper, more personal, as the barriers between enemy and friend continued to crumble. Tell me about your family, Marcus said, carefully reconnecting severed circuits. I have no family in the way humans understand it, Kirathel replied. We are born in clutches, raised by the community. But there was one who guided me, taught me to question. Her skin shimmered with what Marcus had learned was nostalgia. Elder Vexana. She was ancient even by our standards, old enough to remember the time before contact with other species. What did she teach you? That the galaxy was vast and full of wonders we had not yet imagined. That every species we encountered was an opportunity to learn something new about the universe. Kirathel's voice grew softer. She would not approve of this war. Marcus paused in his work. Then why fight it? Fear. The word came out like a confession. When your people first reached our borders, our leader saw only threat. Humans expand so quickly, colonize so aggressively. We feared you would consume us as you had consumed your own planet's resources. And you? Marcus asked. What did you see? Kirathel was quiet for a long moment. I saw what my leaders told me to see, until now. The signal home. By midday, Marcus had managed to restore partial function to his communication array. The signal was weak, barely strong enough to reach the nearest human outpost, but it was something. He stared at the activation switch, knowing that pressing it would change everything. You could call for rescue, Kirathel observed. Yeah, Marcus said. I could. But you have not. Marcus met her gaze. If I call my people, they'll send a combat retrieval team. They'll assume any aliens in the area are hostile. They'll shoot first and ask questions never. And if my people find us first? Same outcome, different uniforms. Marcus rubbed his jaw, feeling the stubble that had grown over the past few days. Funny how similar we are when it comes to the important stuff. Kirathel moved closer to the communication setup, her movements now fluid, despite the healing wound in her chest. There is another option. I'm listening. We send a message to both sides. Together. Marcus stared at her. That's either the craziest idea I've ever heard or the smartest. In my experience, Kirathel said with what Marcus was learning to recognize as her version of a smile, the two are often the same thing. The message, they spent the next 2 hours crafting their transmission, Marcus handling the technical aspects, while Kirathel helped compose the message itself. It needed to be something that would make both sides stop and think, something that couldn't be dismissed as propaganda or deception. We start with facts, Marcus suggested. Verifiable information that proves we're really here, really working, together. Agreed. I will provide tactical data that only I would know, information that proves my identity to my commanders. And I'll include details about the Lucky Strike's manifest, stuff that only the human command would have access to. They worked in companionable silence, occasionally pausing to debate phrasing or argue about the best way to present their case. Marcus found himself impressed by Kirathel's analytical mind, her ability to see multiple perspectives on complex problems. There, Marcus said finally, reviewing their work. Think it'll make a difference? It will make some difference, Kirathel replied. Whether that difference is enough? She shrugged, a gesture she'd picked up from watching Marcus. The approaching storm as they prepared to send their message. The sound of engines grew louder, multiple craft now moving in coordinated search patterns that were rapidly closing in on their location. Marcus climbed to the facility's highest observation point and counted at least 6 Zephyrian ships, their sleek forms gliding between the crystal formations like predators on the hunt. They're good, he admitted grudgingly as he climbed back. Down. We train extensively in search and recovery operations, Kirathel said with what might have been pride, though I suspect your people do as well. Yeah. We're pretty thorough when we want to be. Marcus checked his sidearm, though he knew it would be useless against multiple armed opponents. Question is, do we send the message now and hope someone listens? Or do we wait and risk not getting the chance at all? Kirathel considered this, her skin cycling through patterns of silver and gold that Marcus had learned indicated intense concentration. There is a third option, which is... I go to them. Marcus felt his stomach drop. That's suicide. They'll want to know why you're alive, why you didn't signal for help earlier. They'll figure out you were with me. Yes, Kirathel said simply, and I will tell them the truth, the choice. The truth? Marcus stared at her. The truth is going to get you court-martialed at best, executed at worst. Perhaps, but it might also make them listen. Kirathel moved to the window, watching the approaching ships. My people respect honesty, even when it is inconvenient. If I tell them that a human warrior saved my life, showed me kindness when he could have chosen cruelty, some will hear the message behind the words. Marcus joined her at the window. And if they don't, then I will have died trying to prevent more deaths on both sides. There are worse ways for a warrior to end her service. The simple dignity in her words hit Marcus harder than he expected. Here was someone willing to sacrifice everything for the chance, however small, of peace between their peoples. "I won't let you do it alone," he said. Kirathel turned to him, her eyes shifting to that deep purple of surprise. "You would come with me? Surrender yourself to my people." "I'm not surrendering," Marcus said with a grin that felt more confident than he actually was. "I'm making a diplomatic contact. Big difference. The leap of faith." They sent their message first, broadcasting on both human and Zephyrian emergency frequencies. The transmission included their location, their identities, and a simple but powerful statement. Proof that enemies could choose to become something else. As the nearest Zephyrian ship landed outside the mining facility, Marcus and Kirathel stood side by side, watching armed figures emerge from the craft. The soldiers moved with lethal efficiency, but Marcus noted they didn't immediately open fire on the clearly visible human structure. "Last chance to change your mind," Marcus said. "I could say the same to you," Kirathel replied. "Nah, I've made stupider decisions. Most of them worked out okay." They walked out together, hands visible and empty, Marcus's sidearm deliberately left behind. The Zephyrian soldiers raised their weapons but held their fire, confusion evident in their postures as they processed the sight of their missing comrade walking alongside a human. Kirathel spoke first, her voice carrying clearly across the crystalline landscape. She used her own language, but Marcus's translator picked up the essentials: identification, status report, and a request for immediate contact with command authority. The lead soldier, distinguished by more elaborate armor, responded with what sounded like sharp questions. Kirathel answered steadily, her skin maintaining patterns of calm authority despite the tension of the situation. The bridge minutes stretched, like hours as the Zephyrian commander considered Kirathel's words. Finally, he activated his own communication device, speaking rapidly in what Marcus assumed was a direct line to higher command. The response came quickly, and Marcus didn't need a translator to understand the shock in the voices coming through the device. There was arguing, questions, demands for clarification. Through it all, Kirathel stood firm, occasionally gesturing toward Marcus with what he recognized as respectful introduction, rather than accusation. Whatever she was telling them, it wasn't painting him as a monster. Finally, the commander lowered his weapon. The other soldiers followed suit, though they remained visibly tense. "They want to hear your story," Kirathel translated for Marcus. "Both our stories. Together." Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of history settling on his shoulders. What happened next would determine whether two species continued their destructive war or took the first tentative steps toward something better. "Then let's give them a story. Worth hearing," he said. As they were escorted toward the Zephyrian ship, Marcus caught sight of contrails in the distance, human ships, responding to their broadcast. The message had been received by both sides. Now came the hard part, making them listen. But as he walked beside Kirathel, her presence a reminder that enemies could become allies through simple acts of compassion, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years of warfare: hope. The war between humans and Zephyrians had begun with fear and misunderstanding. Perhaps, if they were very lucky and very brave, it might end with the most human quality of all: the choice to be better than the circumstances demanded. The future unwritten. The Zephyrian ship's hatch closed behind them with a soft hiss, sealing Marcus and Kirathel into what might be their final chapter or their first new beginning. Through the viewport, Marcus watched human ships approaching from the east, while Zephyrian reinforcements arrived from the west. Two fleets, two species, converging on a single point where an enemy had become a friend through the simple act of choosing compassion over cruelty. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen when the children of distant stars remembered that they all shared the same infinite sky.